The Skaven are infamous for their levels of cheese, with countless memes being made about just how many methods they have to get a leg up on everyone else. This is still true to how they perform in Immortal Empires, with their mechanics all still pretty much intact and ready to screw over a whole host of factions, both new and old. They're another faction that can fall into the trap of being so bloated they become hard to play, but once you master them, they are one of the most powerful factions in the game. First of all, the pros and cons of the campaign gameplay of the Skaven. When you have all the mechanics in full swing and working for you, they are really a hard faction to stop, with massive buffs to pretty much everything. Undercities allow them to expand their empire far beyond the borders of their actual empire and receive a laundry list of buffs when doing so. And finally, they can get some stupidly fast growth going on with all the food mechanics in full force. As for the cons, like I mentioned earlier, they have so many mechanics that to start off with, you'll probably feel a little bit overwhelmed until you get on top of things. They always have their own corruption, which you have no choice but to spread, and it lowers your own control, which is a little annoying to deal with and means that most of the time you are going to need some form of control building to stay on top of it. And being the rats that they are, basically everyone hates them, so chances are you'll have a lot of wars declared on you, even more so if you aren't the highest in the power rankings. Just before we enter factions and lords though, a big thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. If you've somehow been living under a rock and haven't heard of Skillshare, let me break it down for you. It is the online learning community where you can find thousands of classes to either learn a new skill or refine an old one. They've got classes for photo, video editing, creative writing, and even leadership and management. There is a whole host of skills that you can learn here. One class I've been enjoying this month is Filmmaking for All by Dan Mace. Now I know these videos are hardly films, though judging by the length of this one, it could be a feature-length film, but this class isn't really about making films, it's just about making videos and the storytelling aspect of that and how you can weave it in to make better content. The class goes into the 7 types of stories that can be told, how you can make them compelling all the way from preparation to execution and of course editing. And of course if that isn't for you, there are still many more classes out there, so there's definitely something that you can enjoy. If you need any more reasons to try Skillshare, it's completely ad-free, there are new classes added every single week, and there are subtitles for French, Spanish, Portuguese, and German. If this sounds like something you'd like to try, then head on down to the description, and the first 1,000 people to click the link will get 1 month free of Skillshare. Huge thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring the video and supporting the channel, really do appreciate it. Now, let's get into these factions. Let's first go through the different factions. First up, we have Clan Moors. This is led by Queek Headtaker. For his faction effects, he has -2 loyalty for Grey Seer recruits, Queek steals a percentage of XP earned by other lords, he has +2 to his hero capacity of chieftains, and it's not mentioned on the faction select, but he's also part of the race to take Karak 8 peaks. When it's not under his control, his faction suffers -2 control faction wide. When it is under his control, his faction is granted an increased chance of Lord's loyalty increasing and +2 to Lord recruit rank faction wide. As well as this, there are unique buildings inside of Karak 8 peaks for some pretty tasty buffs. As for his Lord effects, he grants -50% upkeep for Storm Vermin and Clan Rats, +10 to melee attack and weapon strength when fighting against Dwarves and Greenskins, and +2 uses for the Menace below. His faction starts in the Misty Mountains, and for his starting army, he gains Storm Vermin Sword and Shield, Storm Vermin Halberds, 2 Shielded Clan Rats, 2 regular Clan Rats, Gutter Runner Slingers, and a Plague Claw Catapult. And this faction also starts with a chieftain hero. The climate preferences are the same for all the rat factions. Wasteland, Mountain, Temperate, Savannah, Desert and Jungle are suitable, Frozen and Chaos Wasteland are unpleasant, and Magical Forest, Ocean and Temperate Island are uninhabitable. Queek's victory conditions are Destroy the Crooked Moon and Mutinous Gits, as well as Clan Agrund, Control Karak 8 peaks either by direct ownership or alliances and vassals, and Occupy, Loot, Raise or Sack 30 different settlements. When playing them, you want to finish that starting war to get a full province under your control and a base of operations. After this, head north since that's pretty much where all your victory objectives are going to be. Taking 8 peaks as soon as possible will be useful for buffs it grants the faction, as well as the strong strategic location. Once that's secure, get the best army you can and keep moving north until you track down and take out all your targets. After that's done, just Occupy, Loot, Raise or Sack as many settlements as you can until you get the dub. The next faction is Clan Pestilens. This is led by Lord Skrolk. His faction has a 100% chance of plague spreading, and plagues provide buffs to your armies and settlements. This is helped by the Pestilence Scheme Right, which has its cooldown reduced by 15 seconds. Unfortunately, plague seems to be buffed for the Skaven and Lord Skrolk. I couldn't spread any plagues, and when I did, I only got the negative effects from Nurgle. Hopefully this will be fixed, but you know, Mortal Empire's in beta, so I won't worry too much about it. And his faction also gets 50% construction cost reduction for Pox, Cauldron, Pestilent Nave, and Plague Bailey buildings. For his army effects, he spreads +3 Skaven Corruption wherever he goes, and has -50% upkeep for Plague Monks, Sense Bearers, Plague Claw Catapults, and Plague Priests. His faction starts in Oxel, with 2 Plague Monks, 4 Shielded Clan Rats, 2 Skaven Slave Slingers, 2 Plague Claw Catapults, and a Plague Priest. Of course, he has the same climate preferences as Queek, and For his victory conditions, he must control Itza, Exoatl, Tlaxan, and Zlan-Huapek either by direct ownership or alliances and vassals, and of course occupy, loot, raise or sack 30 different settlements. When playing as him, you want to finish that starting war to get a couple of provinces under your control since it is a bit of a long one. Once this is done, the spine of Sotek dwarves will likely declare war on you, but shouldn't be too much of a challenge with these spells of plague, reducing their armour to make it a lot easier to take them out. Once this is all sorted, build up garrisons and head north towards pretty much all of your victory objectives. Keep taking out as many lizards as possible and build more garrisons to defend your lands and keep moving north and you should be done in no time. There are plenty of settlements to get all the way up to Hexoatl, so you should definitely get that 30 by the time you get there. Next up we have Clan Rictus. This is led by Tretch Craventail. His faction gains buffs to the Skryre Away ability, which gets buffed from 10 to 25% speed, as well as granting 10% ward save whenever active. His faction gains 4 control whenever a diplomatic treaty is broken, and all Storm Vermin gain Encourage, and +3 to recruit rank. In his army, all units gain Vanguard deployment, and all units also gain 13 melee attack during ambushes or if they retreated and have been attacked a second time. Their faction starts in Crookback Mountain. They start with 2 Sword and Shield Storm Vermin, some Death Runners, 2 Skaven Slave Spears, 2 Skaven Slave Slingers, and a Doom Wheel, as well as an Assassin Hero. Same climate preferences as the others, and for their victory conditions they must destroy the Moon Howlers and Knights of Kaldor, as well as that usual 30 settlements. Finishing the starting wall will get you a province under your control. After that you simply have to build up the best army you can to take out Imric, either by rushing growth in your one province, or collecting a few others to get more resources under your control. Just don't leave Imric too long or you will get too many dragons and it'll be much more difficult to take out. Once he is taken out, just grab as many settlements as you can, and there are plenty in the Wastelands and beyond. Next up we have Clan Skryre, which is of course led by the man himself, Ikit Claw. His faction gains access to the Forbidden Workshop, which is one of the most broken mechanics ever to be added to the game. This allows you to spend warp, fuel and food to buff Doomflayers, Doom Wheels and weapons teams, and you can also build literal nuclear bombs to use in combat. Warp fuel can be found as post-battle loot, as well as gained via hero actions with Warlock Engineers, certain missions, as well as upgrading the workshop. The more buffs you unlock in each section, you can also unlock items and special regiments of renown. The workshop also has 4 levels that each unlock more and more powerful effects. His faction also gains 20% to the research rate, +2 loyalty for new recruits, and -40% construction cost for all engineering buildings. His army gains -50% upkeep for Warplock Jezzails, Rattling Gunners and Warp Fire Throwers, and +2 recruit rank for all weapons teams units. His faction starts in Skaven Blight, and for his starting army, he gains 2 Clan Rats, 2 Skaven Slaves, some Warplock Jezzails, 2 Rattling Guns, and some Doomflayers, as well as a Warplock Engineer. He has the same climate preferences as the others, and for his victory conditions, his workshop must reach rank 3 and must destroy Estalia, Tillier, and Carcassonne, as well as the 30 settlements. Your starting war with Estalia will take you to the west and around the coastline towards the south of Bretonnia. The Beastmen will be around and pretty hard to take out this early on, so build up your army as you go and take them out as soon as you can before they get too much momentum. In my campaign, Tillier got taken out by the Pirates of Sartosa, which was very fortunate, but if you're not so lucky, I would suggest building up Skaven Blight to stop them from coming after you, and then come back to take them out once Estalia and the beasts are taken care of. Once they're cleaned up, you can head into Bretonnia to take out Carcassonne, and keep moving north if you really feel like it, but you'll have no shortage of enemies, as is the right way. The next faction is Clan Eshin, and they are led by Deathmaster Snitch. This faction gains access to these shadowy dealings. This is separated into 2 areas: Eshin Actions and Clan Contracts. Eshin Actions can do various things on the campaign map, such as stealing food and money from foreign settlements, debuffing enemy armies and settlements, all the way to usurping faction leaders, destroying every single building in a single settlement, and more. Clan contracts are a little bit more simple. They are missions that come up every so often from the other Skaven clans. These are often contracts against other clans, and completing them will reward you with increased reputation with that clan at the cost of reputation with the target. Having a high level of reputation increases relations with the clan and decreases the recruitment cost of their units, alongside some unique buffs to each faction. Each of these missions must be either completed by Deathmaster Snitch himself or his assassin lords and heroes. Bear in mind that some of them require a high enough level to complete, so get these guys grinding levels as much as possible so that you can use all of these actions whenever you want. His army also gains plus 25% to the ambush success chance, as well as 8 melee attack for embedded heroes. His faction starts in Jingpo, and for his starting army he gains Eshin Triads, Warp Grinders, Clan Rat Spears, Poison Wind Mortars, 2 Gutter Runners, some Night Runners, and some Sling Night Runners, as well as a Warplock Engineer. Same climate preferences as the rest of them, and for his victory conditions, you must perform 8 Eshin actions, destroy the Dimmed Suns, Celestial Loyalists, and the Northern Provinces, and the 30 settlements. The starting war will take you east and then eventually north. This puts you in a great position to move on to the Celestial Loyalists once you're done, to move further north towards the rest of your targets. Once they're taken care of, the northern provinces are a straight shot to the west, then you can grind settlements and Eshin actions to get yourself across the finish line in no time. And our final faction is Clan Moulder. They're led by Throt the Unclean. This faction gains access to the Flesh Laboratory. This allows you to augment infantry and monsters with a set of different effects that get more powerful the further up the trees you go. However, the more effects you put on a unit, the higher the chance is that they'll become unstable, which introduces negative effects alongside positive. Doing this costs mutagen, which is a currency gained from purchasing it directly or from emptying the growth vat. Growth vat is filled with growth juice, which can be gained from post-battle loot, certain buildings, and recycling over mutated units. Upon becoming full enough, the vat can be emptied to create mutagen and a batch of units. The more full it is when emptied, the better the units the batch will contain. Finally, you can also upgrade the flesh lab with food and money to buff it and units in various ways. This faction is also completely immune to mountain attrition, gains 10% HP for all characters, and minus 50% construction costs for breeding stock, pits of the packmasters, force feeding chambers, and laboratory buildings. You can also get access to Gorich, a unique hero via a mission that pops early into the campaign, but will be a relatively medium challenge to beat until you get a decent army online. We'll of course cover him in the hero section. His army also gains minus 20% upkeep and 10 armor for wolf rats, rat ogres, mutant rat ogres, brood horrors, and hell pit abominations. His faction of course starts in hell pit, and for his starting army he has 2 shielded clan rats, some Skaven slave spears, 2 sling night runners, a mutant rat ogre, 2 wolf rats, and one of them is mutated to deal more damage but is unstable, and a unit of rat ogres, as well as a packmaster hero. Same clan rep preferences as the rest, and for his victory conditions he must destroy the Great Orthodoxy and the Ice Court and get those 30 settlements. Your starting war will net you a small province to the west of your capital and provide a buffer for attacking units. You can then go further west and south to build some momentum against minor factions. Once you've got a decent army on the go, take the fight to your 2 targets in the south and the southwest. Once they're taken out, just grab a bunch of settlements in pretty much any direction, as long as the climate preferences stay met. Now we come to the faction's mechanics. First up we have food. Food is a currency the Skaven have access to and must maintain a high level of to do well as a faction. There are 5 tiers and the effects are all felt faction-wide. Being at a higher tier will grant you bonuses to growth, leadership and control, and being at a lower tier will cause the opposite, plus a bunch of income reductions, so make sure you stay in the high tiers or suffer the consequences. Tiers are based on a percentage of the max capacity rather than a flat amount. The max capacity can also be improved with building and research. Increasing the max capacity can make your percentage drop and cause you to fall a tier, so be careful when increasing this too quickly and definitely refill it before upgrading again. Food can be gained through many ways: under empire buildings, farm buildings, post-battle loot and options, raising settlements, research, and the exploitative planning commandment. Finally, it also allows you to instantly level settlements to larger sizes upon taking them. This can be great if you need to rush growth in a province, but don't do it too often, as if you run out of food, growth in your faction, as well as pretty much everything else, will grind to a halt. Next we have undercities. These can be established in one of 2 ways: by a warplock engineer performing an action on the settlements, or as a post-battle option upon beating a settlement in battle. Once built, you can build up to 4 buildings inside them, and they can have many effects: give improvements to your army in the region, attack from below with vermintide armies, or doom spheres if you play an Ikit, which nuke the settlements upon completion, generate food and gold, siphon off the local income, improve the entire faction with various buffs, and cause more under empires to be created in neighbouring settlements. Everything must stay hidden however, and that's where discoverability comes in. Almost everything increases the discoverability, and once it reaches a threshold, the other faction can spend gold to destroy it. Thankfully, some buildings reduce discoverability at the cost of food or gold, and you can also place your own heroes in that province to further reduce this. Bear in mind that enemy heroes will increase this. Skaven corruption is next up. This is spread pretty much wherever you go, and there's not much you can do to stop it. It causes negative control for everyone, including other Skaven, as well as yourself. However, it does allow more uses of the menace below for local armies. This allows them to summon units of clan rats anywhere on the battlefield that will decay over time. There's not much to it really. Just spread it as much as you can for a bunch of those summons and try to destabilize enemy provinces. Just make sure to counter the control effects with buildings and commandments, otherwise you'll be looking at constant rebellions. And their final mechanic is the rights. Like all Warhammer 2 base game factions, the Skaven have access to 4 rights. Each right has unique effects as well as an individual cooldown, and activating any of them will put the rest onto a 5-turn cooldown. The dominating scheme focuses on settlement and army development for 5 turns. The 13th scheme focuses on Skaven relations and characters, as well as granting an army ability to all armies. The Pestilens scheme creates a plague priest that can spread plagues to foreign settlements. As I mentioned earlier, this is bugged at the moment and not working in campaigns, game mode is in beta, etc, etc. And finally, the Scheme of Doom creates a warplock engineer hero that can either create an undercity or cause an earthquake in a foreign settlement, causing massive damage. Now we come to the Lord skills. First up we have Queek Headtaker. He's going to go Root Match first, then Looter and Ancient Cunning, since they're brilliant for that rat playstyle. Extremely Distrustful has some great buffs for Queek, for armor, and even the faction, so grab all of them. Head back into the blue line for Draftsmaster, then grab Mine All Mine, and Lightning Strike if you really want it, then Renowned and Feared, since it's pretty great. Top row has some resistance, which is okay but not essential given his small size. Finally, the Inspiring Presence line to buff your endgame units, then go into Tail Weapon with any points at the end to make him into a better individual battler. Next up we have Lord Skrulk. For him, Root Matcher, Looter, Ancient Cunning, then we're going to go into spells since it's a great lore, and you can't go wrong grabbing everything here. Everything on the loathsome appearance row is great, so I'd grab all of those as soon as I can, and the top row has resistance, which is okay but not essential, and warpstone tokens, which you can honestly take or leave. Finally, inspiring presence line to buff your endgame units, then tail weapon for some battling. Ikit Claw is next up. Gonna go Root Marcher, Looter, Ancient Cunning. Spells of Ruin are also great, so grab any you like from here, and you can't really go wrong grabbing them all. The Power Overload line has some great options to buff Ikit and the army, so grab all of those. Head back into the blue line for Draftsmaster, Mine All Mine, and Lightning Strike, and then Renowned and Feared. The top row has resistance, which only gets better once you get a mount, then the Inspiring Presence line to buff your endgame units, then Power Armor for any points at the end to make him into a better battler. Treacherous Craventail is next up. Root Marcher, Looter, Ancient Cunning. Treacherous Raiders has some great skills for buffing the army in a bunch of ways. Head back to the blue line, Draftsmaster, Lightning Strike, Renowned and Feared. Topper has resistance, which again, okay, not essential, he is very small. And then life is cheap, which drops off once you don't have Skaven slaves, but can be a lot of fun. And then inspiring presence and tail weapon. For Deathmaster Snitch, would you believe it? Root Marcher, Looter, Ancient Cunning. Grab the jump scare line as soon as you can for some great buffs to him and the army. Head back to the blue line for Draftsmaster, Lightning Strike, and Renowned and Feared. Top row again, resistance, not essential, but the rest of them are pretty nice abilities and some more army buffs. Then inspiring presence and tail weapon for army and battling. Our final legendary lord, Throt the Unclean, Root Marcher, Looter, Ancient Cunning. Grab the remolded line as soon as you can for some great army and monster buffs. Head back to the blue line for Draftsmaster, Mine All Mine, and Lightning Strike. Top row for resistance, which is much better once you're on the mount, and Warpstone weapon is nice for some more damage. Then inspiring presence for your army, then tail weapon for some battling. First of our generic lords is the Warlord. Root Marcher, Looter, Ancient Cunning. At rank 13 you can choose from 3 skills, and I like Life is Cheap for that casualty replenishment to keep the army healthy. Head back to the blue line, Draftsmaster, Mine All Mine, Lightning Strike. Top row has resistance, which is great once you're on the mount, and then Warpstone weapon is nice for a bit more damage. Inspiring presence for the army, tail weapon for some battling. Next we have Grey Seers, Root Marcher, Looter, Ancient Cunning. Grab the spell since it's great lore, can't go wrong grabbing everything. Voice of the Horned Rat or Envoy of the Council are both great, and Topper has resistance, which only gets better once you're on the mount, then Warpstone tokens, which again, you can take it or leave it. Inspiring Presence, tail weapon. Warpluck Masters, Root Marcher, Looter, Ancient Cunning. Spells of Ruin are all great, so grab all of those. Power Overload row has some different choices to Ikit, but still pretty great, so pick your favourite and enjoy. Head back to the blue line, Draftsmaster, Mine All Mine, Lightning Strike, and then Renowned and Feared. Topper has resistance, which only gets better once they get on mounts, and then Inspiring Presence and tail weapon at the end. Our final lords are Master Assassins, Root Marcher, Looter, Ancient Cunning. The Expert Ambusher line is pretty great for the army and lord, so pick that up as soon as you can. Blue line for some Draftsmaster, Mine All Mine, Lightning Strike, and then Renowned and Feared. Topper has resistance, which you don't really need since they never go on a mount, but the rest of the abilities and army buffs are pretty nice. Then Inspiring Presence, and then Tail Weapon to finish us out. Now we come to our heroes. First up we have the only legendary hero, and that's Gorage. On the campaign map you can assault garrisons, establish undercities, assassinate, assault units, spread control in a local province, and provide training when embedded in an army. You can use this guy as a campaign assassin since he does have pretty great skills for the map, but he's also an outstanding battler, so it's a tough choice. If you want to do campaign, then pick up pretty much everything in the bottom row aside from training, and he'll do great. For battling, you'll only grab training from the bottom row for free XP, then go into tail weapon to make him even better at fighting. His intact mind and frenzied assault lines are both great too, so grab all of those as soon as you can. The top row has resistance, which is nice for his large size, and then you can grab spread control at the end if you run out of anything else to grab. Next up we have assassins. On the campaign map these can assault garrisons, assassinate enemy characters, assault units, spread control, and provide replenishment when embedded in an army. If you use these guys for campaign assassins or battling single target killers. For the campaign, go assassinate, specialist, then assault units and garrison, and spread control, and you're sorted. In battle, replenish troops is never bad, then the Dance of Death line will buff them in combat in all kinds of ways. Venomous blades and concealment bombs are both great, so grab those as soon as you can, and the topper has resistance, which, again, is okay, but not too necessary given how sneaky they are. Then spread control will do fine for any spare points. Next we have Plague Priests. On the campaign map they can damage walls, wound enemy heroes, hinder replenishment, spread corruption, and provide scouting when embedded in an army. Always going to use these guys in battle, so go straight into the spell since a caster without spells is a bit of a waste. Once that's all filled up, then tail weapon is nice to increase their battling abilities, maybe go some toughness and leadership to go with their mount. Top row has resistance, which of course great to go with the mount, and anything else should go into scouting for more items and spreading corruption. We have our Warpluck Engineers next. These can steal tech, establish undercities, wound enemy heroes, block armies, boost income in the local province, and provide increased mobility when embedded in an army. Not much point using these guys on the campaign map unless you're hardcore spreading undercities or farming warp fuel for Ikit. Might as well keep them in your armies and send them off when you need actions doing or if they haven't anything better to do. So level them for battle, starting with the spells since they're all great, so want to be grabbed as soon as possible. Increased mobility is nice to get that army moving a little bit further each turn. The standardized firing drill line has great units for buffing your missile units, so bring lots of those to get lots of value. The topper has resistance, which is fine, but no mount, so not super necessary. and then boost income for any spare points at the end. Next we have the Packmaster. These can damage buildings, wound heroes, hinder replenishment, stimulate growth in the local province, scavenge more post-battle loot, and can eventually provide replenishment on top of this. These guys are best on the battlefield with the amazing buffs they provide to all the monsters in your armies. If you want to go into scavenge because more post-battle loot can never be a bad thing, then go into the tail weapon line to improve their own battle prowess in a large number of ways. Bear in mind the mount they can get later on when picking to get it working well with that. The carrot and the stick, Master Moulder and Flesh Snatch are all great, so get those as soon as possible. The topper has 2 summons for both kind of wolf rats, so grab those as soon as you can. Missile and spell resist will be useful once you're on the mount, since it is a pretty big lad. And finally, grab Stimulate Growth if you somehow manage to complete everything else. Next we have the Chieftains. These can damage walls, wound enemy heroes, block enemy armies, spread control in the local province, and provide training when embedded in an army. Of course, these guys are only meant to be used in battle. Training is great for free XP, so grab that as soon as you can. Tail weapon has loads of buffs for them in combat and build them for their endgame mount, so some armor and attack will be pretty useful. Red Leader, Paranoid Defender, and Suspiciously Loyal are all great, so grab those. And the topper has resistance, which is great when you're on a mount, so grab that. And finally, spread control will be a good pick once you have nothing else to spend points on. And our final heroes are the Eshin Sorcerers. On the campaign map, they can damage walls, wound enemy heroes, hinder replenishment, spread corruption locally, and provide scouting when embedded in an army. Keep these guys in armies since spellcasters not casting spells in battle are being a little bit wasted. Go into the spells first, and it is a weird but a fun lore to use, so grab whatever you fancy. The Rat Karutaro has some nice picks, so grab all of those once you can, and the Topper has resistance, which isn't amazing, but Warp Fireball, which is a free bounce spell with 4 uses, so you definitely can't go wrong there. Tail weapon will make them better battlers, which will be nice alongside their lack of mount, and finally scouting and spread corruption for anything you have to spare. Skaven also have access to 4 commandments. Efficient planning provides 3 control and -2 corruption, which is great for provinces struggling with rebellions. Expansionist planning provides -10% construction cost for all buildings and 20 growth, which is great for rushing growth and building up provinces. Martial planning provides -5 recruitment cost and +1 local recruitment capacity, which is of course great for recruiting faster and slightly cheaper. Exploitative planning provides +2 food and +3 Skaven corruption, which is great for food, just be careful of any public order issues caused by the extra corruption. And finally we come to the research tree. The Skaven tree is a bit of a difficult one to navigate, with 3 separate starting areas being locked off by buildings, along with many more paths blocked later on down the line. The 3 starting areas focus on clan rats, infrastructure and sneaky units. Then later on you can find buffs to your later game monsters and missile units. There's not really a bad way to go down this one. Just buff whatever units you're using a lot of at the time or are going to be using pretty soon, and grab a couple of infrastructure techs to keep things moving in the campaign. That's everything you need to know about how to play the Skaven in campaign, and we've got the battle guide coming on Friday to run you through the entire roster as well as compositions, so subscribe if you want to see that. Hoping to hit 50k by the end of the year, so I'd appreciate the assistance. If you enjoyed this video and or found it useful, then consider dropping a like, and if you really enjoy the content and want to support it directly, then consider becoming a member on YouTube or a patron on Patreon. Doing so gets you early insights into future content, increased voting power and discounts on merch, as well as shoutouts at the end of videos, just like Henry Tucker for his support at the Officers tier. A huge thank you to all supporters, one last thank you for watching, and for now, I've been COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I will see you next turn.